What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. Blake and I coming at you again for another Canadian Football Fanatics weekly show. Actually, Blake, our first official show of the season, if you will. I don't believe we'll call our draft shows officially a part of the season. We'll go with tonight being officially episode one or show one of the Canadian Football Fanatics weekly show. From here on out till Grey Cup, you can see Blake and I both of our pretty faces on a weekly basis. And hopefully everyone's enjoying Blake and I coming at you guys every week talking CFL football, talking U Sports football, you name it, a little bit of CGFL in there as well.
Heck, we
But,
might even throw in
folks,
some high school once in a while.
yes, we could. Folks, we are in May. Football season is here. It is no longer down the road, no longer to be talked about. We have actual practices being played. Uh, it is time, folks. Football season is here, and with football season being here, we have our CFL season preview show. If you guys were following the channel, following the podcast last year at this time, you guys were well aware that we did the same kind of series similar to this last season. Divided it up into two shows as well, an East Division and a West Division. Some similar guests to last year. So if you were tuning into last year's show, Cliffy Pine, Mark Steven, a few other guys that'll be on the East, the West shows. So stay tuned in the next 2 weeks. You can see Blake and I here on the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel, and we'll be doing our season preview show. And this week we'll be doing the East Division first. But before we get to that, I'll bring in my co-host Blake. Blake, thanks for joining me tonight, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, Cole. Really looking forward to this. As you said, we're uh, we're on the weekly train now, if you will. So either people are really gonna love hearing our voices, or they're gonna get really sick of them really quick. But either way, we're gonna be at you weekly, whether you like it or not. So we hope that you subscribe and tune in every week. Because we're going to be here from now until probably the end of November, even after Grey Cup. I would assume that you and I are going to do like kind of a Grey Cup recap. Of course, you and I will be at the Grey Cup together this year for the first time, so it'll definitely be a fun season.
It will indeed. Like I said, Blake, it's kind of off season. You always get those kind of first few months blues, if you will, of I miss football season. Not having anything to come home and watch on Friday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Even a little bit on Sundays before the NFL starts. And then obviously Blake. Earlier in the new year here, we kind of got in touch about possibly going up to Kamloops this spring is what kind of we talked about. Now it's here, and we're going on Friday. So it's just exciting times, man, for the podcast, for CFL fans, for Lions fans, for anybody that's a fan of the Canadian Football League in general. And before we get going, anybody that's tuning in here tonight, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Head on over to the Instagram page, follow, comment, like, all that good stuff. All the support is greatly appreciated as always. You guys will hopefully be seeing a lot more content from us now that the season is here. As you saw, maybe if you're following the Instagram page last night, looking to hopefully doing a little bit more reposting and stuff like that. And then obviously when Blake and I are up in Kamloops, we'll hopefully be able to give you guys a little bit more content when we're boots on the ground up there. But hoping to doing some more reposting throughout the CFL, the Lions content teams on the Instagram page. So go on over there on the Instagram, follow us at Canadian Football Fanatics. It is only going to get busier as the season gets here. So, as well, I guess lastly, we can follow us on the Apple Podcast as well at Canadian Football Fanatics over there. So go follow, rate, review, all that good stuff over there. So, Blake, we got blue skies, sun in the air. Football season is here. Not too much to complain about, man. So really looking forward to
Canucks are
tonight.
winning their series.
The Canucks are winning their season series. And I guess we can kind of banter a little bit quickly here. How about that game last night? Hey, buddy, what a thriller that was to be down. Obviously, Oilers get a penalty or power play quickly there in the game, and Canucks fashion. They've kind of been very stoic at very kind of not flinch, being able to kind of take the punches and roll with them. And they come out with a 4-2, I believe, 3 win last night in
Yeah,
Edmonton. So we won't talk too much, but any good Canadians probably paying attention to the Stanley Cup playoffs right now, and the two Canadian teams that are left in the Stanley Cup playoffs been three. Maybe I'm a little bit the fan goggles on, but three entertaining games for my money. But looking forward to game 4 tomorrow night, Blake. I can't believe it already. Game 4 in the second round. But
I know, I know.
get back onto football, Blake. Is there any certain guest or maybe a team that you're looking forward to chatting with tonight?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of guests. So I'll give you one that I'm looking forward to chatting with tonight, and then one that I'm looking to forward to chatting to next week as well. Actually, a couple next week, but I'll start with the one tonight. It's we're lucky enough to have Mike Hogan, who's going to join us about 10 to 6, I believe, or maybe it's about 5:30 for the Argonauts. He's the play-by-play voice of the Toronto Argonauts. And then a couple in the West there. Sheldon Jones is going to join us next week. He's going to be our Riders guy from the Two and Out podcast. Sheldon and I kind of forged a friendship last year. Maybe if he's willing, we'll share the story of how I ended up spending a night at Sheldon's house last year, coming home from Banjo Bowl. But and then Mark Steven, we talked to him with the mock draft there. So he's the voice of the Stampeders. So as you know, Cole, as we kind of get sidetracked, it seems like every episode, I'm pretty big into the play-by-play broadcasting. So I'm really looking forward to taking a peek behind the curtains of kind of what those two gentlemen and those three gentlemen actually are looking forward to most for this season.
So absolutely, Blake. As you teased there, and I teased a little bit earlier there, Blake and I will be back with another CFL season preview next Wednesday. I believe it is May 22nd, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Blake and I will be up in Kamloops there for this weekend. Be able to come home. Was going to try to go for maybe another Monday, Tuesday show, but just the way things worked out, we're going to go with a Wednesday show next week. And like Blake said, a few special guests, Sheldon Jones, Mark Steven, I believe Darren Bombing for the Bombers, a few others. We will leave the BC Lions guest to be a surprise as of now, but stay tuned for next week. It should be a lot of fun as well. And Blake, let's get into it, buddy. Let's, without further ado, bring in our first guest of our CFL season preview here from the
Wait,
reigning,
Cole.
defending, undisputed Grey Cup champion, Montreal Alouettes, and the Alouette Flight Deck podcast, Cliffy Pine. Cliffy, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Yeah, as I was expecting, and you guys did not disappoint, so thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us, Cliffy, so much. But Blake, what did you have something to say?
No, I was just gonna say I was really glad that you introduced Cliffy that way, Cole, because that's exactly how I was gonna introduce Cliffy. If anyone listens to the Alouettes Flight Deck, which you should, it's a really good show with Cliffy, of course, and Tim Capper. But that's how Cliffy introduces himself every single episode right now.
Absolutely. I was able to firsthand see that on your guys' actually live stream there, Cliffy, the other day at training camp, or I believe actually it was probably yesterday. Yeah, it was very fascinating stuff. Very good content as well, just for the CFL. Not that I'm an Alouettes fan, but enjoying that type of stuff of, being at training camp, giving your opinion and stuff like that for others that are not able to, attend and stuff like that. For Blake and I's sake, preparing for a show like this tonight. As kind of had to we had to introduce Cliffy in only the way he knows how. So the reigning, defending, undisputed Montreal Alouettes, Cliffy Pine will join us tonight and talk some Montreal Alouettes football. And Cliffy, it's been a long off season, but I would imagine it's been a pretty joyful off season for the defending Grey Cup champions. At every turn, maybe you lose a guy or two. Lemon to retirement, Ugoak to, some NFL stuff. But, you can kind of always fall back on, what, we're the Grey Cup champions, baby. We won the Grey Cup trophy last season. All is good until football is played again. But now we're here where, work's being put in again and football will be played here in a month's time. How's kind of the off season been for, the Grey Cup champions?
Just a non-stop party, to tell you the truth. I mean, The excitement as the Alouettes winning the eighth World Cup championship.
Sorry, Cliffy, you having a little trouble hearing you there. Maybe you want to just try maybe plug in or try again there, Cliffy.
Sorry, is this better?
No, having a little trouble here. I'll just try to remove you, Cliffy, here, and then bring you back in here, really quickly. Can I hear you now, Cliffy?
Hold on.
Blake, do you got him? I kind of. Oh,
It's really staticky.
Sorry, is this better?
Yeah,
That's better.
perfect.
That's way better.
There we go. Now
All
we got
right.
you, Cliffy. So as I was saying, as the Grey Cup champions this offseason, how has it been?
Oh my gosh, it's been such a blast. I mean, to be able to talk about winning a Grey Cup championship and seeing the after effects after this victory has been incredible. And yes, you had alluded to it as well. Yeah, there was a few changes that were going to be made. That's normal. It's rare to see a team stay 100% complete after a victory like that. And invariably, people are going to retire. People are going to maybe try their hand at the NFL, or in the case of Sean Lemon, get indefinitely suspended. Hopefully that's going to change, and hopefully he gets a chance to end his career on the right note, not because of impending suspension. But that's for another time. So we'll let that play out as it does. But I mean, by and large, this Alouettes team, the core nucleus that helped win this Grey Cup championship, is coming back in 2024. And that, if that doesn't get you excited as an Alouettes fan, truly, I don't know what will.
Absolutely. Blake, you want to step in here, buddy?
Yeah, definitely, Cole. So Cliffy, we know everyone by now has seen the famous video of Cody before the Grey Cup. F it, just watch. Nobody thought that you guys were. First of all, nobody thought you guys were going to beat the Argonauts. You did, and then no one really gave you a chance against the Bombers in the Grey Cup either. And so, how do you guys follow that up? And especially on the quarterback side with Fajardo, how do you think he follows up last year's? Let's be honest, Cliffy, last year was a bit of an up and down season for the Alouettes going to the playoffs, as it was pretty famously noted that the Alouettes hadn't beat anyone with a above 500 record going into the playoffs, and they hadn't lost to anyone with under a 500 record.
It's so funny because, and it was actually detailed in the Grey Cup ring itself, was that journey, including like the last time the Alouettes lost a football game was back in September of 2023. And Darnell Sankey had infamously stated after that loss, which was an embarrassing loss to Toronto at BMO Field, he stood on business. He said, "We're going to win the next 5 games, and then we're going to win the Grey Cup." And at the time, it's like, okay, that's a bold statement. I mean, that's huge. And yes, one could argue that the 5 remaining games that the Alouettes had to play were against lower level teams. And the knock is always going to be, well, sure, you can beat the teams that are, worse than you, but until you beat an actual team with a winning record, then this is all just talk. Well, sure enough, you win those 5 regular season games. That's fantastic. You go to the playoffs. You're hosting the Eastern semifinal against the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who you've beaten twice already this year and is considered one of those lower level teams. You beat them, go to the Eastern final against the Toronto Argonauts, against a 16-2 Toronto Argonauts team that beat you 3 times this year. It was 3 times the Alouettes lost to the Argonauts in the regular season. It should be a tough task, right? But they just didn't get the memo. The Alouettes just didn't get the memo that they were supposed to lose and let Toronto go to the Grey Cup, as everybody would have expected. They come in, they paste the Argonauts, go to the Grey Cup, and everybody's like in shock. No, like you really shocked the world by doing that. Like, okay, well that's amazing. You beat the Argos. That's fantastic, but there's no way you're beating the Blue Bombers. Once again, the Alouettes just did not get that memo. And you talk about an exciting, thrilling game against a team that quite handily beat you both times in the regular season. But once again, it's a brand new season. Like the playoffs are a brand new season. And the Alouettes just weren't having any of it. And Cody Fajardo had noted all of this. And he took it to heart, a lot of the commentary, a lot of the people with your power rankings and what have you saying, this team's going to be in 9th place. This team's going to be dead effing last. In fact, I've even seen some people ranking them 10th in a 9-team league. That's how bad they thought the Alouettes were going to be. And that was his motivating factor. That's what drove him. And that's what caused him to get up in front of his teammates and just say, you know what? Forget everything. And just, you know what? F you. Just watch. We're going to do this. And they did it. And to me, I think the best tribute to this whole entire thing, if you were to look at the Grey Cup ring that these players just got this past Friday, you look at the bottom of the ring, and engraved in it is 1% and then FYJW. I don't think I have to tell you what FYJW stands for. I mean, you talk about you talk about the perfect way to commemorate such an incredible season and to really truly, I guess, pay homage to such an incredible event. Like Cody's getting up in front of his guys and rallying them like that. To see that engraved on the ring was absolutely outstanding. And fun fact, I spoke with Cody yesterday at the end of camp. I said, like, what do you think of the ring? Like, how great is that? He did not know that they were going to do that. That's the best part. Like he saw that for the first time when they opened up the box and they saw the ring. Someone actually had to point it out to him. Like, oh, look what's on the bottom. Oh my gosh. He was beside himself. He was so happy. It was just such a great tribute, such a great, tremendous achievement from this team. And I think really, if you were to ask Cody Fajardo, like, okay, you've climbed the mountaintop, you've done everything that nobody was expecting you to do. How do you top that? I guess the simple answer is do it all over again.
Yeah. So Cliffy, let's talk a little bit about Mr. Fajardo. Obviously, Blake and I are familiar with him back to his time in BC when he was a younger guy. Obviously, he's a veteran now. And you talk about him kind of.
Are you there?
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I got you back.
Okay. You talk about, Cody kind of hearing all the noise and stuff like that, the power rankings and stuff like that. I think about his time going back to, Saskatchewan and stuff like that, hearing all the noise. I'm not too sure how much of it was true, but a little bit of the noise kind of when he left Saskatchewan about maybe possibly walking away from the game just because of how much kind of it wore on him and stuff like that. Now that he's won a Grey Cup champion and kind of you can, knock the monkey off your back, if you will, Cliffy. Do you think there's maybe potentially another level for Cody Fajardo where you can really show people that he is an elite level quarterback and can really turn a corner here? Maybe it's kind of a weird thing to say when he's, I believe, in his 30s, but maybe he's starting to really the game's really slowing down to him and really starting to confidence is a hell of a drug, I believe, is what they say. And once you win one, maybe you start to win another one, and it just starts to snowball effect from there. So do you think maybe potentially there's another level for Mr. Fajardo?
I do. I think, as you said, he got that monkey off his back because, yes, he's already won a Grey Cup as a member of the Toronto Argonauts back in 2017, but he didn't really participate other than wearing a uniform and standing on the sidelines. And yeah, you get a ring for it and you can call yourself a Grey Cup champion, but for someone with that competitive fire like what he has, it doesn't feel like you're a Grey Cup champion at that point. Now, with the win this past November, he can definitely say, yes, 100%, I proved I could lead a team to the promised land. I can bring them a championship. And I know that's going to be a motivating factor for him to be able to show that it wasn't a fluke, that it wasn't just, luck. And anyone who thought that the Alouettes were lucky that day clearly don't know what they're talking about, because you talk about hard work and dedication. Like, that's exactly what Cody Fajardo had brought to this Alouettes team at the start of the season and continued on throughout, good, bad, or other. I mean, he had his ups and downs, as every quarterback is going to have in this league, but I think Cody truly realizes what he has now here in Montreal. He has Jason Moss backing him up. He has Danny Machocha backing him up. And they've basically said to him, this is your team. You are the leader of this team. You're the man here in Montreal. And I think without having to look over his shoulder or have anyone doubting him, I think it has to be a tremendous weight off of his shoulders. And he can just do what he does best. And that's just throw the football and connect with his receivers and just lead. And truthfully, I kind of laugh, like, with all the quarterbacks that have been through Montreal over the years. I mean, for him to be able to do the one thing that all those guys couldn't do, and that's bring Montreal a Grey Cup championship, has to be such a tremendous honor for him, and something that I know he doesn't take lightly. And I think he's just excited to go out and show that, yeah, this was not a fluke. I'm going to do it again.
Blake, you got anything, or can I go?
Yeah, I actually do have a question for you, Cliffy. So you were at day one of training camp yesterday. I'm going to try and say this properly, in Trois-Rivières. Is that correct?
No, last year it was in Trois-Rivières. This year it's in Saint Jerome.
Oh, okay, Saint Jerome.
Yep.
Who's kind of someone that stuck out to you on day one of training camp for the Alouettes?
Well, I was going to keep an eye on some of the free agent acquisitions. I want to see how they were going to respond to now being members of the Alouettes. But I mean, that's the funny thing about first day, right? Everybody looks good, right? Because they're dying to get on the field. They've waited a long time. It's been almost 6 months since they've been able to strap on the pads and get out there. So everybody's out there. Everybody's looking great. And man, I tell you, I can't say anyone really truly stood out that first day. I don't think it's so much about standing out. It's just a simple matter of getting out there and touching grass again and being a part of it. I will say though that Davis Alexander, who I think will be the backup quarterback for Fajardo this year, that guy's got some zip on his ball. When he launches a football, it is a thing of beauty. Like just everything he does when it comes to a passing game is absolutely outstanding. And I'm expecting a big year out of him as well because yes, Fajardo is the QB1 without any question. And this, we've said it before and we say it again. This is definitely 100% his team. But if God forbid he does go down to injury, all Jason Moss has to do is tap Davis Alexander on the shoulder. Is like, it's your turn, kid. You go. And I don't think it'll be a problem. The moment will not be too big for him. He'll be able to step in behind center and he'll be able to lead this team to victory. I definitely feel confident in his abilities. And I fully expect, especially now that he also, too, is a Grey Cup champion, in the same sense that Cody Fajardo was a Grey Cup champion back in 2017, he's going to want to prove that he belongs on the field as well. And I have no doubt in my mind that if his number is called, he'll be ready to go.
So, Cliffy, before we get into maybe some of your record predictions, standing predictions here, I got one last question to ask you. Confidence level in Fajardo is, I would imagine pretty high in the fan base. You said it yourself that you think that, if everything works out, he could potentially, maybe reach another level. Do you think that the Owls are maybe potentially set up to, run things in the East for the next, maybe another year or two here down the road with, things kind of opening up in the East? I feel like obviously the East has been pretty a new team almost winning it every other year for the last how many years, but I think they're kind of set up in a lot of foundational places. A younger defensive pieces. Obviously lost a young piece in Uguak, but someone like a rookie of the year, Reggie Stubblefield. You got your quarterback, you got a Tyson Philpott. You got that head coach. AC, a guy that's been there, done that. Obviously Pierre Carl Palado, kind of maybe that Amar Doman effect in kind of that organization with rejuvenating the organization a little bit outside of kind of the play on the field with kind of attracting fans, stuff like that. Do you think that the Owls are in a good position to contend for the East for a few years here?
Definitely, I think that as we talked about, keeping the core element together, the not just the players but the coaches and the administration, all the people that were involved in winning last year's Grey Cup are back by and large. I mean, the big important pieces are back and ready to do it all over again. And I think the way they've got things set up right now, the way things are sitting right now in the Eastern Division, I mean, it truly is Montreal's to lose when you think about it. I mean, Toronto, as great as they were last year, I mean, with the whole Chad Kelly situation right now, I think there's going to be a lot of question marks as to whether Cameron Dukes can step in for Chad Kelly and lead this team. I mean, I'm sure he'll do fine, but will he be able to? I don't think the Argos are going 16-2 this year. I will say that much. I don't think they're completely ruined, but they've got their work cut out from this year for sure. Hamilton, we see what's going on with Bo Levi Mitchell. Even though he says he's going to be okay for the first week, I mean, seeing him in a walking boot has to give Tiger Cats fans a lot to be concerned about. So, I mean, he too has a lot to prove. And is he going to be able to do it, or is it going to be Taylor Powell that's going to have to step in for the Tiger Cats and lead this team? And then Ottawa, once again, we're back to new quarterbacks, new everything. It just feels like they're doing yet another reset. And hopefully for their sake, they found the right combination. But until they get out there and start playing, we don't know if the Drew Brown experiment is going to work or not in Ottawa. So truthfully, Montreal's got to be sitting there looking at all this and like, that's not being overconfident about it, but it's like, yeah, not only can we hang, but we can definitely run things in this division for a little bit. So I think Montreal is in a great position right now. They've got their key elements signed, sealed, delivered, ready to go. And I definitely think they definitely can be one of the top tier teams, not just in the Eastern Division, but in the entire Canadian Football League.
I'll say, Cliffy, you better watch out when you guys come out west, I tell you. But jokes aside, Cliffy, let's get into record and division predictions, if you don't mind, Cliffy. You can start with the Alouettes. You can start with 1 through 4. Doesn't matter, but the floor is yours.
Well, again, I'm leery of predictions usually, just because they always tend to come back and bite you on the butt more often than not. But as I said, I think Montreal and Toronto will be competitive this year. I definitely think Toronto, you truly can't count them out, despite the fact they've lost a lot of their key elements that made them a great football team in 2022 and even in 2023. Truthfully, if I were to look at this division, I would say probably Montreal, Toronto. I'm going to say something a little shocking, but Ottawa, Hamilton. I think Hamilton, they've really got to prove themselves. It's hard to believe that a team with Bo Levi Mitchell could end up being in last place in the Eastern Division, but it's not the same Bo Levi, and I think that's a big concern. They've also, too, lost a few key elements to their attack and their defense, and I'm not saying they're going to be terrible, but they've got a lot to prove as well. But I think Ottawa, if they found that right mix, they could be competitive as well. But I think, I'm going to say right now, the Eastern Division is probably going to be Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, and Hamilton.
So, Cliffy, I'll ask you quickly, if you think that Ottawa and Hamilton will be the 3 and 4. Do you think there'll be a crossover this year, or does Ottawa make it back to the playoffs?
You know what? I think Ottawa does actually make it back to the playoffs. I think Ottawa and Edmonton, the two teams that didn't make the playoffs last year, I think they will make it to the playoffs. And I think, I as much as I think the world of Matthew Schultz out in Calgary, that's another situation too that I think there's a lot to be proven. There's a lot of work to be done there as well. Don't be surprised if we end up seeing Calgary and Hamilton on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs. I think, and Saskatchewan too, I think they've made a lot of improvements. I think they're going to be very competitive as well. But I mean, you're dealing with a new head coach and a new everything. I guess Montreal being the exception, because they had a first year head coach, or their first year head coach for them took them to the Grey Cup and won it. But I mean, Jason Moss has been head coach before in the league, whereas Corey Mace has not. But the players love him. The players will believe in Corey Mace, and I think that Saskatchewan will definitely be competitive this year. But will they make the playoffs? It remains to be seen. I think it's going to be, once again, a dogfight in the West between BC and Winnipeg. Edmonton too, I think will improve. I think they've got a chance to be competitive as well. But that third spot, it's going to be a tough fight between I think Edmonton and Saskatchewan, and I guess someone wearing green is going to be making the playoffs this year. I'm pretty sure of that. I just don't know which shade of green is going to make it.
I hope Andrew's not listening. His head might get a little big, but
yeah. Well, Cliffy, thank you so much joining us for the second year in a row on our season preview show here. So, as mentioned here earlier in the show, Cliffy, big fan of your work with you and Tim over at the Alouettes Flight Deck podcast and all that good stuff you guys got going on over there. So, before we get you out of here, let the people know where they can find you and Tim's work this season.
Well, if it's on, whether it's however you listen to podcasts, you can find it just by searching Alouettes Flight Deck, or just check out our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Alouettes Flight Deck. Feel free to give us a follow on Twitter or X, however you want to call it, at Alouettes FL Deck. You can find me at Cliffy D, and you can find Tim at Repact. That's REPPACT. Just to let you know that we are planning to go back to training camp a few more times this season. We're planning to do some more episodes of Flight Deck Live, not just at training camp, but after every game, win, lose, or draw, you're gonna get our thoughts of the game that you just saw, and we are just so excited. Like, we got a chance to do a lot at Grey Cup this year, and it's just strengthened us. It's just made us want to do even more. So we've got a lot of big plans that we want to do with the Flight Deck, and we sincerely hope that each and every one of you comes on board and checks us out and joins us along for the ride.
Cliffy, are you coming out to Vancouver for Grey Cup this year?
You better believe it.
All right, awesome. The first round's on me.
Just try and stop me.
Well, Cliffy, thanks for joining us, and we will see you in November.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Cliffy.
Have a good night, Cliffy. Well, Blake, 1 down, 3 more to go, my friend. For everybody tuning in here tonight, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Support Blake and I on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the YouTube channel as always. So, Blake, let's get to guest number 2. For everybody that's tuning in here, appreciate all the support as always. Like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, when you guys go subscribe, hit the little notification bell. You guys will get notified every time we go live. We upload any sort of content here on the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. All the support is always greatly appreciated, folks. So go hit the subscribe button. We would love that very much. So, Blake, let's get into guest number 2. Let's head to Toronto and bring in the play-by-play voice of the Toronto Argonauts, Mike Hogan. Mike, thanks for joining us tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing great here from my beautiful accommodations at the University of Guelph.
Awesome. So taking in training camp like a true pro. Thank you for joining us. I would imagine it's a busy time, taking in practice and stuff like that. I would imagine taking in some, getting a, chance to take a deep breath and relax in your dorm. Giving us a few minutes of your time is greatly appreciated. So before we get into it, everybody that's watching, as always, support the channel, support Blake and I, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. As always, you can find the podcast on Apple Podcast as well. So, Mike, let's get into it from Orgo's standpoint. And if you don't mind, if you're comfortable with it, maybe starting with the obviously Chad Kelly situation. And if you're not comfortable with it, obviously all good. But just any kind of opinion or just kind of any thoughts on the whole situation.
Well, I know everybody wants to talk about that, but obviously I'm an employee of MLSE and there's a lawsuit underway. So I'd love to talk about the specifics of Chad Kelly. I can't. Once everything gets ironed out, obviously we can talk about that. I'm more than willing to talk about the quarterbacking situation, but just I can't talk about Chad. And I hope I understand you had to ask the question, but I hope you understand my answer.
No, we totally understand.
Absolutely understand. So friend of the podcast, big guy in the CFL kind of content community. I'm sure you've seen his work here. Coach Phil Reacts had Mr. Cameron Dukes, I believe, on his show there earlier in the off season here, and kind of spoke highly of him, and he kind of put his Coach Phil stamp of approval on him, if you will, and said, what, I'm pretty high on this guy, and I think he's going to do some good stuff. So can you tell us a little bit about Mr. Dukes?
Yeah, Cam's a guy who, when he came up here, obviously, unless you were in the personnel department, you didn't know much about him because tough guy to follow because he went to a tiny college called Lindsey Wilson, which I hadn't heard of before we signed him. And then he was off to Arena League for a year and he did really well there. He took Lindsey Wilson to the national championship at that level. So he came up here and you could see there's something there. You didn't know quite what it was, but he could move around. He's not the tallest guy in the world, but he can move around. He could throw on the run. He's got a really good arm. But you were always wondering, okay, what's he going to do when things get going? And he really got thrown into the fire last year. His first start was in Winnipeg. And Winnipeg was playing for first place in the West at the time. So it was a huge game for them. The Argos had just clinched the East a week or two earlier. So the modus operandi at that point was, okay, how do we get guys rest? Because we didn't have a break, a bye week last week after Labor Day. So we had, 2.5 months before playoffs without a break. So it was, okay, we got to get some guys some rest here. So one of those games was that game, and Chad Kelly sat down that game, and it was an opportunity to see what the kid could do under pressure. And when he left the game at the end of the third quarter to put the other backup, Brian Scott, in, who was back with us again this year, the Argos were leading. So, he did a really good job last year. So there's something there. He's looked good so far. I know we're only 2 days into the full camp as we talk, but there's something there. It'll be interesting to see. And that's obviously, the big question I think everybody has, whether it's internally or externally, is how's he going to do under at least 9 games as a starting quarterback. And it's his job to lose right now, I would think. And right now, he hasn't done anything to lose it.
So, Mike, Coach Corey Mace, of course, left for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the former Argonauts DC. How big do you think? How big of a loss do you think that's going to be to the Argonauts' defense? I mean, you guys were 16-2 last year. Of course, the unfortunate ending, losing to the Alouettes in the East Final. Of course, I believe it was 6 picks, if I'm not mistaken, by Chad Kelly.
La,
And
la, 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 la.
yeah, you of course don't want to hear that, but the
And you make me
unfortunate
follow
ending.
the L's guy. You make me follow Cliffy too. So it's thanks for that.
Yeah, it's just the way the schedule worked out. But how big of an impact do you think that's going to have on the Argonauts defense this year? Is of course Coach Mace left you with one of the top defenses in 2022 when you guys won the Grey Cup, and then you had one of the top defenses again last year, and you guys really had a similar story to last year's Alouettes in 2022, as going into that Grey Cup game against the Blue Bombers, the game in which they beat the Lions 2 years in a row. We don't want to make it 3, but in all seriousness, no one really gave you guys a shot in that game. Of course, McLeod Bethel Thompson, who's now in Edmonton, was the starting quarterback. He leaves about halfway through the fourth quarter, pardon me, with the Argonauts trailing, and then Chad Kelly comes in, kind of rescues that Grey Cup. So back to my original question, how big of a loss do you think it's going to be losing Coach Corey Mace?
Corey's awesome. Like when he came here a couple of years ago, I think everybody realized it wasn't a matter of if he was going to become a head coach. It was a matter of when. He punches all the cards. He ticks all the boxes. Great intangibles. Fantastic guy. Smart, effective. Players loved him. But what we were left with was some guys still on staff who know the defense inside and out. Will Fields and Kevin Iben were assistants last year. They're going to be the co-coordinators. Will's going to look after the back end, and the linebackers are going to be Iben's. Kevin's going to call the plays. And then we've added Demetrius Maxey, who's not only been a fantastic all-star player in this league for a long time, has been a great coach out in Edmonton, and he brings in a lot of experience as well. So will Corey Mace be a loss? Yeah, but I don't think the replacements are anything to sneeze at. We're fine coaching wise on both sides of the football.
And Mike, I just want to take you away from the Argonauts just for 2 seconds. If you've watched any of our lives before, I'm big into the play-by-play and stuff like that. So I've seen a lot of your work on Crown Gridiron Nation, the show on TSN and stuff like that. If you could maybe take just like 2 or 3 minutes on how you got into play-by-play and got your job with the Argonauts.
Oh, wow. I was in radio for 35 years. 25 years as a talk show host in Toronto with the Fan 590 and then TSN 1050. I always wanted to do play-by-play. I was a kid that, late at night would have the radio under the pillow and I'd be listening. I'm from Kingston, Ontario, so we'd get a lot of the major markets via radio at night. So I could listen to like a New York Mets game or St. Louis Cardinals game or Cincinnati Reds game or hockey or football, whatever the sport may be. And I lived and died radio, got into it. And I wanted to see if I was any good at play-by-play. I volunteered to do the Ottawa 67's play-by-play back in the late 80s. And I wasn't I don't think I was a very good hockey play-by-play guy. I find that in hockey, the energy level has to kind of be up here at a constant. At least that's the best guys in the business do that.
Yeah.
As I started to do other sports, I found that I'm more of an ebb and flow guy, which football is perfect for because you have the downtime and then you can build to a big play and then you can bring it down. Boxing was like that for me. Basketball, I've called those sports. I thought I was better at those sports than I was at hockey. An opportunity came up when I was at the Fan 590. We had the rights to the Vanier Cup games. And the guy that called the first couple was Mike Inglis, who was our morning show host and has for the last, 25 years been the play-by-play voice of the Miami Heat. He went down there to take that job. So when Mike left to go to Miami, it opened up a job doing that play-by-play. And I went into our boss, not knowing what the hell I was doing, and said, "Do you mind if I try this?" And I was hosting a football show at the station at the time. He said, "Sure, go ahead." And I did that. I guess I did well enough to do the next year, did a few games, did a few Vanier Cup games. That was the only game of the year I was calling. And then I got a call from CHCH Television in Hamilton Paul Hendrick was leaving as the play-by-play voice of the OUA game of the week, which was shown provincially in Ontario. And they said, we've heard your work. We know how much you love football and love this level. Would you like to be our play-by-play guy? I jumped at it, did that for a couple of years. The Fan 590, where I was working, got the Argo play-by-play rights, and it seemed to be a natural fit. So I did that and the OUA for a couple of years. And then we lost both rights the same time. I did Laurier football for 4 years, and then we got the Argo rights back. And I've been doing that since 2007.
So did you do the 2014 Vanier Cup here in Vancouver?
No, I didn't. I was doing the radio call here. The last one I called was the 2005 Laurier win. I was doing Laurier games at the time, and they won. It was a remarkable experience. But I did 13 Vanier Cups in total. The last one was in 2005.
Yeah, Marshall Ferguson, I believe, was the quarterback for McMaster that year, if I'm not mistaken. And
backup. He was Kyle Quinlan's backup.
That's right. Kyle Quinlan was the starter, and I still say to this day that was the best football game period I've ever seen in my life.
It's funny because like that comes up, and people ask me because I love the NFL and NCAA football as much as I love CFL. Like and to me, it's not 1A or 1B. It's like I love both sports. I think I'm lucky that way. But if you were to say, hey, Hogan, write down your top 10 most exciting games of all time, probably 8 of them would either be CFL or U Sports games. The rules just make for a more exciting game. I love the NFL, but I'm still waiting for somebody to say, with all honesty, one NFL rule that's better than a CFL compatriot. The rules are just better, are more fan-friendly in the CFL, I find anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cole, you want to jump in here with a question?
You're muted.
Thank you, Mike. Let's get back to Argonauts football here, and let's talk about the Argos draft class. And I thought it was fairly impressive, considering they obviously picked the big name there that I think everybody's kind of fallen in love with here early is Kevin Mytel, and we'll get to him, but I find it pretty impressive the haul that you guys took away, and obviously these guys will be able to prove themselves here in a few months. But considering no second round pick, and I believe they picked it wasn't a early third round pick. I believe it was kind of towards the middle of the third round there. I believe it was 23rd or 4th or something like that. But names like John Bosse and Tyshawn Blackburn, another guy that I was a big fan of that I thought kind of slid in a way, but Tyson Hergott from Waterloo, defensive lineman. What can you say about the draft class and maybe anything you've seen from them in the early days here?
It was fun, and I will recommend if you're interested. I was in the war. Well, I wasn't in the war room. I was sick. I had COVID during the draft week.
Oh, no.
So they set up a computer in the quote unquote war room, and I was able to write about everything that happened the night of the draft, which is I've been doing that for the last few years. This one was interesting because they had a couple of guys. They knew they were going to be picking 5th, so they had 5 guys that they thought might fall to them, and they'd have at least the 5th one on the list. They didn't expect Metal to be there. They expected Ottawa to take him. So when he was still available, it was like, oh, this is interesting, because another guy that was in their top 5 was still available. So what they did was they drafted Kevin, and then they tried to trade up for a while to try and get the other guy. Eventually, he was selected, but they still tried to trade up in the draft, and I was trying to figure out why, and they really liked Hergott. They were trying to trade up to get him, and remarkably, he fell to 24. The Argos at 24, 25, and 27 in that round. Excuse me. And they were giddy because they didn't have to give up any assets to get the guy that they were trying to trade up to get. So it just seemed to be, oh, that guy's still available. Wow. And one of the reasons I started writing this article, it was when Barker and Milanovic, it was during that era. It was the Anthony Coombs draft year. And I wanted to, because all you hear in any sport, oh, we couldn't believe that guy was available. And I was working at TSN at the time, and I said, I want to write this, and I want to, see how accurate you guys are. And what I've learned is everybody's draft board is going to be different. And I do believe now when a guy says we couldn't believe he was going to be there, I would say probably 80% of the time, the guys really couldn't believe that the guy was going to be there. So I know that's been the case often for the Argonauts. They always haven't got who they'd like with their top pick. But this year was a case where they got a guy that they honestly didn't expect to be there at 5, and then a guy they really didn't expect to be there at 24.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Hergott. I think, rightfully so. Brubaker kind of got his flowers after the combine and stuff like that. But I think people kind of maybe forgot about it. Like, Hergott's past few seasons, arguably could have been the runner-up for the JP Metris Trophy for the best lineman in the country if it wasn't for Theo Benedette. Just really big, put up monster numbers at Waterloo. I think he's going to do really good things in the CFL, and I think he'll be one of those ratio-breaking defensive ends for
Well,
years
he's
to
got a
come
motor,
here.
doesn't he? I mean,
He's got a motor, man.
We've got
He's
guys
got a
up here.
motor.
We've got guys up here on the D line like Arimolade and Serezna. There's a rookie from Houston, Derek Parrish. He's kind of in the same mold where they just don't quit. And that's Hergott, right? I mean, that's everything you've seen out of, I as you mentioned our show, and thank you for doing that. I kind of keep a closer eye on the OUA than any of the other leagues. That's what I've been covering for the longest period of time. But he was fantastic. Waterloo didn't have the best season in recent years last year, but Coach Bertoya knows that he had something special there. And I texted him after the draft. I said, "Are you happy now?" And he said, "Oh yeah, we're pretty happy."
Yeah, with 15 and 19, I was pounding the table hoping BC was going to select him, but he fell into somebody's hands. I'm sure they were saying I couldn't believe he fell. But Blake, anything else?
No, I think Mike, if you want, just maybe give us your East Division predictions for this year, where everyone's gonna finish.
Toronto 18-0. I'm contractually obligated to say that. It's funny because I had a hunch you guys are going to be asking this. And the one thing that I find about the CFL this year, maybe more so than any in the last few years, there are some question marks, but I really don't see there being a weak sister this year.
No.
I don't think there's going to be that team that's out of contention by early August. The teams that were not playoff teams last year, I think, have all done something to improve themselves. And whether or not that's going to be enough, we'll have to figure it out on the field. I just hope everybody continues to pick the Argos 9th in the power ratings, and just underestimate us, because this is a pretty good football team again this year.
You can't steal that. That was
material.
That was Cliffy's thing from last year, so you guys can't steal that.
Oh, okay. Well, I have to begrudgingly I have to cede to the Alouettes this year.
Okay, my last thing for you here, Mike, is with some loss in leadership, if you guys on defense, if you guys on offense, what do you think maybe is your confidence level in this group to find some new names, especially without your QB1 for a few weeks. Obviously the plan is to have him return at some point, I would imagine, this season, but have guys like a Cam Duke step up and really take that role of being a leader kind of in and out of the huddle, the pregame speeches, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a couple. The leader of this team is Wynton McManus. He's the guy. He's constantly positive, constantly. He's very outgoing, and when you can back up your talk with remarkable game, that's a guy. Flo Rimolade, I mentioned him earlier. Guys on the back end like Amos and Mechie are veterans now. These are all guys who can lead. I'm waiting to see how Serezna, as a talented veteran, fits into not what's happening on the field, but how he kind of fits in the pecking order instead of leadership. Or is he a guy that's just going to go out and bust his rear end every play of every game and every practice and lead that way? Offensively, Dukes is going to, it goes with the position, right? That you have to have at least some modicum of leadership capability there, and he's got that. Like the guys like Cam, and know what he can do on the field. Maybe as a vocal guy, DeVaris Daniels is a guy that's that oozes leadership as well. He may step up and take a little bit more of a leadership role vocally this year, but he's a guy that certainly leads by example. It's those veterans who just go out and do their job the right way every day. I don't think you need to be loud. We had Ricky Ray in here who never said a word, but he was the undisputed leader of the team, right? Like, you don't have to be raw guy. There are enough guys to do that. I think leadership comes from what you do on the field, and there are enough veterans on this team. I think a lot of people have rightfully questioned about, the amount of guys that we lost via free agency. But I don't think people talk enough about who's back. And there are a lot, essentially the offense aside now from the quarterback is going to be the same, except Ouellette's out and Kadeem Carey's in and Rasheed Bailey's in right now as the R. So, I mean, there's another veteran with championship pedigree. And on defense, there's so many guys coming back, and maybe the one lack of experience might be boundary corner to start, but there's a lot of guys who are in there. But other than that, I mean, it's Pierce, it's Jones, it's McManus. Talked about the front four: Robbie Smith, Sean Oakman, Jared Brinkman's now in his third year, Tavares McFadden at the field corner. Mason Pierce came in here last year and started the last half of the season. So there's a lot of Quincy Mauger has starting experience in BC. So I mean, there's a lot of veterans back. Maybe the one open spot right now is boundary corner, and day two, the guy that was out with the ones was Benchy Franklin, who was up here last year. Played one game and I think he had a pick and a fumble recovery for a big return in Ottawa. So there's a lot of experience on this defense, and I don't think a lot of people are talking enough about that. They're talking about the departures first, which is understandable.
Well said, Mike. Well, thank you so much for jumping on today and chatting some Argos football. We had a blast. Before we get you out of here, Mike, let the people know where they can find your work for Crown Countdown as well.
Yeah, that's KGN on TSN, I think, on Twitter. I'm at Mike Hogan Argos on Twitter, and I just got an IG account up. Same thing, Mike Hogan Argos, same as the Twitter account. So I'll be a little more active on that. I just set it up. My old one, I was inactive for quite a while. So that's where you can follow me. I'm pretty active on Twitter. If you have any questions or comments, I'll try to get back to you.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Like I said, appreciate your time, and definitely recommend for any Canadian football fanatics out there to go watch the Crown Countdown U when it comes on this season. So, Mike, we'll chat soon and have a good season.
Thanks, guys, and
Thanks,
keep
Mike.
doing what you're doing. We all appreciate the passion you guys have for the 3-down version of this game. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike. And that does it for 2 down, Blake. 2 more to go. I love it. Chatting some Canadian football man is just some of my favorite things to do, especially with the season.
So cool.
The season almost here. We're chatting about things that are maybe happening, this, that. We're kind of hopefully getting to the point now where we're chatting about real deal things being set in stone. So let's move to Hamilton now. And I will bring in Troy from the Eating 'em Raw podcast. Troy, thanks for joining us tonight. How you doing?
Good, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
I appreciate you pinch hitting last second. I know things kind of got scrambled there, but I also appreciate Josh for finding a last second replacement, and you guys just being flexible and able to step in here. So nothing crazy like I was telling you about, maybe about 15, 20 minutes here, chat some Ticats, and we'll get you out of here. First, we will get the banner out of here, and we'll properly introduce some Ticats talk here. So let's get into it. Obviously, it was the big news from day one of our Ticats camp, of the walking boot, all that sort of stuff. But Bo comes out, kind of puts a little bit of hush on that, and says I'll be ready for opening week one. Kind of just more some precautionary stuff. But in the fan base, you kind of having a more of a pulse on it. How were kind of things and kind of things were, I feel like, getting a little bit from maybe social media, kind of starting to a little bit anxiety in the fan base there.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a split 50-50, especially with the news yesterday that Taylor Powell signed an extension with the team. Just based on kind of what I've been seeing, and I try to keep my eye on everything, is that it's kind of split down the middle of people that are good with Bo playing and people that are no, let Bo be the backup. Let's go with Taylor Powell. So, I'm interested to see. Scott Milanovic obviously came out before in February, I believe, and said that Bo Levi was the starter and it was his job to lose. I'll be interested to see how things go. Obviously, Powell got majority of the first team reps today, and they're kind of ramping Bo back up. And come week 1, I think he'll be the starter, but it's not a job that he is, should be comfortable with because of Taylor Powell and how well he played last season.
And sorry, Troy, I'm not really. I believe it wasn't like necessarily another injury. I believe it was just like a setback in his recovery, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
Yeah, he was working out with Ticat strength and conditioning coach Marcellus Bowman. He's been doing that. He came on our podcast a couple weeks ago and was talking about how much he's been in the gym with Marcellus. And yeah, it was a setback to the leg that he injured in Ottawa. Just sounds like he pushed a little bit too hard and needed to kind of step back and give it a little bit of time to rest up. But he says he feels pretty good today. And, the Ticats, I'm sure, will give him the Kawhi Leonard treatment of load management and, have him bid on a pitch count and let Powell take a lot of the reps because Bo, you kind of know what you have with him, right? So no need to force him in a situation where it's not really needed.
And before I let Blake kind of step in here, Troy, to stick on the quarterbacks before we get off that, you mentioned the contract extension for Powell. What's your maybe confidence level in Taylor Powell? Obviously Bo's kind of the man for maybe this season and maybe next. Obviously, is kind of his resume is Bo's resume. He's who he is. But what's your confidence level of Powell being the quarterback of the future, and maybe in a few years here he's the guy that kind of takes over the reins?
Yeah, I'm pretty high on Taylor Powell just based on what I've seen and the situation of him coming in last year as a raw rookie, later in camp, kind of getting thrown to the fire. And I thought, all things considered, he played pretty well. Obviously, there were some issues with some turnovers, but that's going to come with a rookie quarterback, right? And I think that he's shown even early in camp that he has progressed to a level where he is going to be a CFL starting quarterback one day. And I'm hopeful, and I think Ticat fans are hopeful, that he is that guy. And I believe he's that guy, and the team obviously believes he could be that guy too, or else they wouldn't have offered him the extension, right? So, I think confidence level within the fan base is pretty high on Taylor Powell. I will say, though, that I think Ticat fans are maybe a little higher on him than he's viewed among the rest of the league. But I'm interested to see if he plays this year and if he does kind of what he does with that time now that he knows kind of that he belongs in the league and he commands the huddle.
Yeah, and Troy, if you want, kind of plug your ears here, but the last time the Tiger Cats won the Grey Cup was not in this century. It was 1999, and Scott Milanovic, he's the head coach and GM right now. Especially after the disappointing season that you guys kind of had last year. You were hosting the Grey Cup, and they kind of got to host the Grey Cup the way they wanted, is what the Tiger Cats put it. As of course, in 2021, there was still a lot of restrictions, stuff like that. So you got to show off your city the way you wanted. 2021 was, of course, the heartbreaking loss to the Bombers in that Grey Cup. But last year was a disappointing season. You finish 8-10, third in the East, and then lose to the Alouettes in the Eastern semifinal. Do you think that Milanovic is under any sort of pressure to perform this year? Is he on the hot seat at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is his first year as the head coach. Came in last year as a consultant, I believe, first, and then took over the offensive coordinator duties. But no, I don't think that there's really any pressure on him now. The pressure would have been last year with Orlando Steinauer, with, as you mentioned, the Grey Cup being in Hamilton. And, that kind of signified a bunch of changes. All the guys that were kind of part of that 21 team, the 2019 team, they're gone. Brandon Banks is retired. Dane Evans is retired. Ted Laurent just recently announced his retirement. Dylan Wynn is in Montreal. So it's kind of the changing of the guard right now. And, Hamilton went in a direction this year where they got younger. I believe they kind of had a veteran team last year trying to build for that Grey Cup game. And, the core group wasn't able to get it done. So they decided they had to go in a different direction. I think that includes Orlando Steinauer to a degree. Obviously, they moved him up to president of football operations. But no, I don't believe that Scott Milanovich is really under any pressure at this moment in time. I mean, you're always under pressure to win, but he's more, I think, trying to build the team for the next 2, 3, 4 years instead of trying to build them for right now.
Yeah, and just what's one off-season acquisition that you're really looking forward to seeing in the black and gold this year?
Yeah, absolutely. It's easily for me Jamal Peters. I think he's the best boundary corner in the CFL. The Ticats had some trouble last year with that boundary side, and I think you saw a couple of years ago with Delvin Breaux where he would just lock down the one side of the field. I think you get to a little bit of a lesser degree. Obviously, Delvin Breaux is a CFL Hall of Famer, and I think Jamal Peters is on his way to potentially becoming that. But I think Peters has been the best corner that Hamilton has had since Breaux retired. And I'm really excited to see what he does on that side of the field with Kenneth George Jr. beside him at boundary halfback.
So you talked about getting younger Troy. Let's talk about this year's draft class. And obviously, mock drafts are mock drafts, and CFL organizations probably have a lot different boards and opinions than some of our mock drafts. Not saying that some of the guys like Marshall Ferguson, those guys put in a lot of work, but for my money, I was kind of hoping for obviously Nathaniel Dumoulin-Duguay at 6 there ahead of you guys. You guys obviously take him at 7. What can you say about Mr. Dumoulin-Duguay, first of all, and kind of maybe the early days here you've seen him at camp?
Yeah, absolutely. He's pro-ready at this point. I think he was probably the most pro-ready offensive lineman of the guys that were available. Obviously, you have the Theo Benedicts and Manu, who's off in Detroit. Like, those guys went to the NFL for a reason. But of the guys who are still available in the CFL draft that you knew you were getting immediately, I think he was definitely the most pro-ready. I think he'll be probably the 6th offensive lineman. And the fact that he can play all 3 positions, I mean, I think he grades out better to be a center or a guard in the CFL. But you could put him at tackle if necessary because that's what he played at Laval, right? So, I think they got a steal of a deal with him at number 7. There were some mock drafts that I saw him going as early as 5, maybe in the top 3, depending on who you talk to. And I mean, Ticats have their kind of next in line, I guess. David Beard, Brandon Revenberg, don't get me wrong, great players still have 3-4 years left in the tank at least. But to have that kind of contingency plan for what they're going to do in the future with him and then Dayton Black, who they took 6th overall last year, I think it was a really smart move by Hamilton. And, in the CFL draft, we sometimes see teams decide that they're going to pick based off need instead of just taking the best available player. I think Hamilton took the best available player with Nathaniel Dumoulin-Duguay.
And then maybe a little bit more of a sleeper, but actually had him on the podcast. And obviously you have a RB1 there in James Butler, who, Blake and I are very familiar with his game. And, personally, for my money, he's probably, maybe RB2, 3 in the league behind maybe Oliveira. So not to say that, he's coming on the heels of him, but Matthew Peterson, a guy that I like, that I think could be developed into a pro back here in a few years. But what do you think about his potential and just maybe the selection for the Ticats?
Yeah, absolutely. He was really good at the University of Alberta. I'm actually based in Calgary, and I used to go to the University of Calgary, so I saw him a couple times here over the last couple of years. I like him, obviously. The depth chart right now, he has to be kind of lower down below, the James Butler, Ante Milanovic-Litre. But I think having him in a room with those veteran players who know what it takes to succeed in the CFL, I think is really beneficial for him. And I mean, there was some talk about the running back who went to Montreal, Herzog, I believe his name is, that he was probably the best running back in the draft. But I really like Peterson, what he did in the Canada West. That's not really a league, I guess, where rushing comes easy and they like to play that smash mouth football. So, and I think he can contribute on special teams too. So I think that was a nice late round find for the Ticats.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, as a rookie, you're probably not going to get a lot of starting reps. So if you want to cut your teeth, if you will, in the CFL, you're going to have to play on special teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe he has the ability to do that. And I mean, rookies coming into the league, a lot of the times when you get into that later rounds, that's kind of what teams are looking for, right? Is guys that can contribute on specials. And I mean, if he turns out to be a guy kind of similar to Sean Thomas Erlington, where you can use him in offensive situations, I think the Ticats are playing with house money there on that one. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, keeping an eye on him here over the next couple of weeks, and I guess over the next couple of years as well.
Yes, absolutely. Blake and I, being out in BC here, was able to see him actually play against UBC, and he actually popped up one of his longer runs of the season this past year. But interested to see how he becomes a CFL pro. So you mentioned about people at camp, covering camp and stuff like that. Would you mind me talking about maybe a couple camp battles that you're interested on, and maybe a name or two that potentially could be maybe like a sleeper, maybe a diamond in the rough, maybe the next Reggie Stubblefield or something like that, a guy that comes into CFL training camp really unknown and ends up winning maybe a rookie of the year type award.
Absolutely, yeah. Shameless plug. I'll do it right now. I actually wrote a piece for 3 Down about 5 camp battles to watch with the Ticats. The one for me that is most interesting now, especially with the retirement of Jordan Williams, has got to be linebacker. I think that 2 of the spots are probably locked down at this moment. Well, locked down, I guess I shouldn't say, but you could probably write these 2 names in pencil, and that's Kyle Wilson at middle linebacker and Carthel Flowers-Lloyd at Sam linebacker. And, Tyrese Beverette in Montreal. I believe if you were to find a guy that was pretty much mirrors Tyrese Beverette, that's Carthel Flowers-Lloyd. They both went to the same school, Stony Brook. Both are pretty similar size, both starting out their careers with the Ticats. So I think he's going to be a guy that people are really going to be interested in. And I think he's going to prove a lot, maybe not prove a lot of people wrong, but, kind of open some eyes, I guess, across the league. And I guess he's not really that much of a diamond in the rough, but so I'll go in a different direction and go on the opposite side of the ball with receiver. I think one of the receivers that they brought in, Johnny King, I think they're pretty high on. Shamar Bridges, there we go. Yes, I was blanking on his last name there for a second. Was another guy that they're really high on. Justin McGriff, fans probably saw last year during training camp. He was kind of the MVP, I guess, for the Ticats in training camp, and they were really excited to see what he could do. And then he suffered an unfortunate injury that kept him out for the remainder of the year. But I think there are some guys in the receiving core there. Those 3 names I mentioned, maybe Chris Coleman could be another one that could make an impact this year. And when the season ends, people are going to go, yeah, okay, that player was pretty good for the Ticats this year.
So,
Awesome. Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, Troy, just if you want, give us a bit of your predictions on the Eastern Division this year, where the Tiger Cats finish, and maybe even if you want, how playoffs shake down on the way to on the road to Vancouver. I still can't believe I get to say that, but I don't have to leave my own bed for Grey Cup this year.
Yeah, I already have my Airbnb and tickets booked for Grey Cup, so it should be a good time. I went out in 2014 for that Grey Cup, and that one was a fun one as well, obviously outside of the result of the game, I guess, if you're a Ticat fan. But the parties and stuff were unbelievable, hospitality suites and all that. So, yeah, I mean, I was in Hamilton last year. I'm getting a little bit off topic. We're talking about Grey Cup now. But
all good.
Yeah, it's exciting. And, I mean, BC, Amar Dorman has I always say the last name wrong. He's really upped the ante here over the last couple of years with the Lions, and I'm really excited to see, the halftime show, kind of the stuff they've already come out with the zip line and all that seems really cool. So I think they're going to kind of set a new standard for how the Grey Cup should be run. And yeah, I'm excited to see that. As for predictions, I'm not really much of a predictions guy myself. Putting a label to something is not really in the business that I try to get into. But, the East this year, I will say the East this year is going to be wide open now, especially with the Chad Kelly news. And it'll be interesting to see if Hamilton can juice out the last little bit of Bo Levi Mitchell's career if they go on to Taylor Powell. And, I think I've said this on our podcast a couple of times. I like what Hamilton's done with their roster. The biggest question, obviously, is at quarterback. And if they can get consistent and productive quarterback play on a week in and week out basis, I think they have as good a chance as anybody from the East. But that's the thing, is you're trying to rely on a quarterback who hasn't had a full season since 2018 and a second-year rookie who, how many times have we seen a guy come in, light the world on fire his first or second year, and then kind of drop off the cliff, right? Like Jonathan Jennings, I'm thinking of BC. He's probably one of the guys that I think of like most as a recent example of that. So there's a lot of question marks at quarterback, but if they're able to kind of revitalize Bo, and if there's going to be a head coach, I believe it would be Scott Milanovich to do that, just based on his track record with Anthony Calvillo and Ricky Ray kind of at the tail end of their careers. He'd be the guy to revitalize them, but that's still a big question mark, right? So yeah, I as I said, Toronto, I still think has the best all-around team. I think they're probably the best bet, even with Cameron Dukes, to probably make the East Final. I'd probably go Montreal in there as well. Hamilton and Ottawa, I guess, fighting for third place there. But then that's, I guess, kind of as far as I'll go. But I think it'll be an interesting season for sure, especially in the East Division.
Awesome. Troy, I appreciate you having a little bit of fun with us and chatting some Canadian football, man. The CFL season is here, and it's exciting time. So before we get you out of here, let the people know where they can find your work for the Ticats as well as at 3 Down.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, I was thinking about it today when you asked me to do this. I was driving home and I was like, man, I can't wait to actually talk about football stuff. You know, all the stuff in the off season is great. I love free agency and all that, but the fact that football is on the horizon is definitely exciting. But yeah, you can find me at Troy Durrell on Twitter. You can find our podcast page at Eating 'em Raw on both Instagram and Twitter. Definitely hit us up. And then obviously all my writing is at 3 Down Nation, so you can find it at our website there.
Yes. Thank you so much, Troy. Appreciate you taking some time out of your day, and we will chat soon, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Troy.
Have a good one. See you guys at Grey Cup.
We'll see you at Grey Cup. All right, buddy. Last but not least, let's head to the nation's capital. Let's bring in Shane Ray from 13th Man Sports. Let's talk some Ottawa Redblacks football. Shane, thanks for joining us tonight. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on.
So you are you're the caboose. You're the last guy here and to talk some East tonight, man. But looking forward to. I know we've been looking forward to a few weeks here now, preparing for the show. So it should be a good time. And to be honest, we're 2 minutes over schedule, which I thought we were going to be probably like 10 minutes over schedule. So doing pretty good. And seeing as that you're the last guy, we really don't have kind of time restrictions here. So if we go a little bit over, no big deal. But let's get into it. Let's get into obviously Drew Brown, QB1 of the future of probably this season, comes over in a trade from Winnipeg this year. What kind of your initial thoughts heading into the season with potentially your new franchise quarterback?
I'm interested to see how it plays out. We've seen this type of story before. We saw it with Arbuckle. We saw it with Jennings. Like we've seen this chapter write itself over and over, and I'm kind of hoping it ends in an Ottawa favor versus not in Ottawa's favor. We had Trevor Harris, which ended up with a Grey Cup appearance, which was great. I still think Dustin Crum is a very underrated player. Same with Tyree Adams. I know a lot of hype is going to be around Drew Brown. He's been paid the big money. He's coming in expecting to be QB1. But if he struggles or if he gets hurt, like Dustin Crum's right there as his QB2. He's more than capable of leading this team. And then for whatever reason, if you're down to your third string, you have Tyree Adams, who's going to be coming off a lower body injury. I believe it was his ACL. He's looking good. He's looking recovering. I know there's no real timeline of his return, but Tyree Adams was QB2 last year until his injury. He looked good. So I know there's going to be a lot of hype around Drew Brown, but that entire quarterback room isn't one to sleep on.
And would you be maybe keeping an eye on Toronto early in the season, potentially if Cameron Dukes, obviously you talked about your quarterback room and having some names behind a Drew Brown, because obviously in football it's kind of unfortunate sometimes that sometimes maybe you have to go with the guy that you're locked to because of the money that you're tied to them. Would you maybe keep your eye open on maybe a team like Toronto come calling maybe after training camp getting into the season there, they're not maybe quite comfortable with Cameron Dukes and possibly Ottawa's able to gain another asset?
No, I don't think you trade one of your quarterbacks. We've seen it the last couple of years where we've had our own quarterback health issues that trading within the division so early in the year just doesn't make any sense. Like, it just, unless you're offering something that's too good to be true, or you just can't say no to. If they're offering like 2 first-round picks for like Dustin Crum, you're not going to say no to that. But overall, you're not just going to hand him away to a division rival. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Pick, yeah.
But in regards to trades, I definitely think there's a possibility that Ottawa makes a trade before the season. I think there's one situation where they end up bringing in someone in because guys that they have in camp just aren't living up to expectations, and they can't afford to have a bad start.
And what's that situation, Shane, where you could see the Red Blacks making a trade?
Running back with Devontae Williams out for the year with the Achilles injury, and then blanking Jackson Bennett retiring like 2 weeks before camp. That there's a big hole of experienced running backs for Ottawa. You have Polk, who has been on the practice squad last year. You have a couple of NFL type guys, but you don't have that CFL experience that you need to have an effective running game, in my opinion. I wouldn't be shocked to see someone like Sean Thomas Erlington or potentially, Johnny Augustine out of Winnipeg, depending on how Chris Ike does over there. Could be 2 guys to look out to see if Ottawa's kind of swimming in the waters there.
Yeah, I love it. So obviously we did, the mock draft here on the channel. We've been talking for a few weeks leading up to the draft and stuff like that. Obviously the time comes and you guys go with a receiver, but maybe not the receiver that many were kind of picking, that sort of thing. Not just the receiver in general in your first round pick, but just as a class as a whole. Did you kind of enjoy the draft class, and what were your thoughts on going with the receiver over a potential Kevin Mattel?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the whole Kevin Mattel versus Nick Martiner thing. They're 2 completely different types of players. I understand why they went after Martiner. He, 6'6" body. He's going to be a red zone threat. He'll be able to take the top off the defense. You'll pair him up with Dominic Rhymes. You have 2 giant receivers on the outsides. So I understand why they went with it. I have no issue with it. I think it can be a great pick for Ottawa. And I think Martiner's more CFL ready than Mattel. I think Mattel would have been, mostly special teams, like kind of that 7th, maybe 6th receiver within that core. And when you have a giant need for Canadian receiving talent after letting go of Bahar and not really bringing anyone in, you need someone who is more day one ready, and Martiner's that guy. So he finished his rookie camp with the Giants. They announced his signing today. I know there's a couple of reports. I believe Tim Baines came out today and said that he is expected at camp on Tuesday. So he's a guy that I'm interested in watching. And Daniel Polko is another guy who we picked at 11th, who could just be like one of the best interior linemen coming out of U Sports or coming out of NCAA, coming into the CFL draft that I have seen in the last 5-10 years. Like, he's just so powerful.
Yeah. So Blake, do you want me to go or you want to go, buddy?
You can go for this one, Cole.
No, so I'm curious. So obviously there's been a few seasons here of a little bit of struggles now. You obviously bring in Drew Brown with a trade. A guy like Dominique Rhymes. Bob Dice is obviously in, I believe, going into year 3, if I'm not mistaken, as Ottawa Red Blacks head coach. Or
year 2. He took over halfway through the 2022 year. So he's going into his second full year.
Yep, year 2 for sure. You get a guy like Drew Brown, right? You kind of turn the page on that Masoli era. Do you think there's any sort of kind of pressure here early on for Drew Brown to perform, or kind of maybe they go in another direction to pair up Drew Brown with another quarterback another quarterback, another head coach where, you know, you're not going to maybe kind of get rid of both your head coach and quarterback in the same offseason. Maybe you're able to, you know, go with Drew Brown and able to kind of stop gap him with another, you know, coach, and kind of it's I feel like it's not a cycle you want to be in, right? So do you think there's any sort of pressure here early on for the Red Blacks to kind of turn things around and start off on a good foot here?
Oh, 100%. It's a lot like Edmonton, where it's playoffs or bust. Like there's no excuses for a losing season. Like, sure, they can go 9-9, but it's playoffs. Like the expectation in that room within that coaching staff has to be playoffs. There's no excuses. Doesn't matter that you have Drew, like your first time starter in Drew Brown. If you don't believe you can do it, you have Dustin Crum, who you spent basically all last year with. Like there are no more excuses. You have to get it done. And if Burke is watching it, and I know right tackle has been a talking point among fans and media between Pelios and Bull got hurt at training camp today. There's really no update on it and how serious it is. But if you watch the games last year, right tackle was horrendous. The play calling didn't help. There was a lot of issues with the play calling, and that's why Kahari Jones was let go at the end of the year, and they brought in Tommy Condell. But there's no reason for this team by week 7, week 8 to have a losing record. Like it won't be accepted from a fan's perspective, and it shouldn't be expected from a management or executive perspective either. We've had we've won 14 games since 2019. There's no way you can have another losing season.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sorry,
Blake.
Paul. Shane, you mentioned Dante Bull and him getting hurt today at training camp. I actually hadn't seen that. And in full disclosure, I've kind of gone down the Twitter rabbit hole of, you know, Canucks Oilers fans and stuff like that. And that's a complete gong show. But we're here to talk football. So Dante Bull was the first overall pick last year. And by all standards and all we've been hearing out of Ottawa and the CFL circles in general, he was kind of a bust, at least last year. We'll put it that way. He was a bust last year. Do you think that he's a lost cause, or can he turn it around and prove that he should have been the number 1 overall pick last season?
I don't agree with bust. He should have never seen the field. He had a serious leg injury. He really wasn't where he needed to be physically. I think he was kind of put in a situation where he wasn't going to succeed in anything. Didn't matter if he was, you know, put at guard or tackle. He shouldn't have seen the field. And do I have my concerns? 100%. I had my concerns when he was drafted. I wasn't a huge fan of it when he was drafted. You spent your first 2 picks the year prior on Pelios, who, again, you don't know what you have of him still. He hasn't really taken over that right tackle spot. And you also draft Hogan Sandon, who, by all accounts, is arguably a top 3 center in the league. This guy is amazing. He's powerful. He's strong. I think he's going to be considered one of the better interior linemen in the next 5 years. Like the league's going to recognize the name. They're going to recognize how dominant he is. But I didn't like the Bull pick. I think it was a little bit of a reach, especially considering you had Pelios right there. So it's going to be interesting. And if they can't perform, you're not going to, again, we've seen Edmonton do it this year. We've seen Winnipeg do it. So it's not unheard of for teams to just cut bait on first round picks. But considering that those 2 guys were 2nd overall and 1st overall respectfully, I just don't see them cutting loose right away. But they both need to be better. Like even,
Bob Dice said so, I believe, in his availability yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, and like going to see him at rookie camp, and obviously rookie camp isn't anything like main camp. There were struggles. They had their show. They definitely struggled, and there was question marks on if both of them could even play tackle in the CFL when they were drafted. So I'm hoping they get that sorted out. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some level of concern and pessimism when it comes to where they are with that position.
And I definitely had my sorry, Blake, before you go, I definitely had my eyebrows raised when I kind of was preparing for this yesterday, listening to the Bob Dice interview there with the media, and he kind of was pretty, blunt with the situation of, we need to see some more from, I believe he said Pelios and Bullen, kind of, puts their feet to the fire, if you will, and kind of, lets them know that this is not, college football anymore. This is pro football. And, like you mentioned, Anthony Bennett, a first round pick, gets cut, I believe, by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers this past weekend. So it could happen to you. But sorry, Blake, before interrupting you, go ahead.
No, that's all good, Cole. Shane, you mentioned the running back battle. This is kind of a two-part question. So is there another battle that you're looking forward to here in training camp? And then in regards to Bob Dice, is he the right man for the job in Ottawa? I mean, we saw the viral clip. He clearly loves the players. The players clearly love him. The viral clip that I'm referring to is the game where the Red Blacks came back and beat Winnipeg last year early in the year, and Bob Dice is screaming on the field and he's celebrating, and kind of all the players run by him and he has no one left to celebrate with. But that was more in the moment. I mean, everyone was just so happy that they came back and won the game. So maybe you can just touch on those two things.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really pay much attention to sideline celebrations or anything like that, especially with that win, with what Dustin Crum did and like that whole situation. I think there's more to it than surface level visuals. From everything I've heard, everyone I've talked to, people love Dice. Like he's a really great coach. There's always going to be a learning curve going from a special teams coordinator or an assistant, like an OC or DC, to a head coach. So I think it's a little early to judge him on where he can take this team. I think this year is going to be a really big year for them. But I think that locker room is behind him and will play well for him. Like there were times that there was, and I think this is why they moved on from Kahari. And I think Jones is a great coach. I just think their coaching styles didn't work as well as maybe they thought they would. And Jones or Dice seems to have a very, I've hired you to do a job. I'm going to trust you to do the job. He works with special teams. He'll allow his OC and his DC to work within their roles, which any good head coach should allow. But they weren't getting results. And at the end of the day, it falls on the head coach no matter what. But I think he's fine. I think this is a big year. If they stumble out of the gate, there's probably a little bit of fire under his on his seat. But I don't think it's because the players don't support him. And to your first question, technically, the battle that I'm interested to see is the Canadian wide receiver battle. A lot of unproven names now that Bahar's gone. Martiner's in it, who should be the favorite, but you have Daniel Perry, who out of Saskatchewan had a really good U Sports career, solid receiver out of Saskatchewan. Daniel Elagio out of Ottawa, who again, solid career, nothing to raise eyebrows, but a very solid career in Ottawa. And then obviously Keating Burlington out of Carleton. Those three guys need to take a step. You're going to have Nick Martiner. One of those four will have to step up to replace Bahar. Like you just, in today's day and age, you can't run 4 or 5 American receivers. It messes your entire ratio up. Obviously, if you had to, you could. We've seen Winnipeg do it, having the double Canadian backfield gives them that ability to do so. If they wanted to offset a Canadian, they could. Ottawa doesn't have that luxury. So that's the battle to watch out for, is wide receiver battle for that one Canadian spot. Because any 4 of those guys could easily be cut if they do not show that they belong on that field.
So let's take it back to the offense, take it back to your quarterback and the guy who will be obviously in charge of the offense, who will be calling plays, and new offense coordinator Tommy Condell. What is your confidence level in him and kind of how he can maybe scheme his offense around Drew Brown?
Yeah, so I'd be lying if I said that I was 100% confident, and my optimism level was at 110%. We saw what Hamilton's offense was under him. It was really good for a really long time, and then it died. The last 2-3 years under Condell wasn't the greatest offensively. They had their struggles, right? I think we can all admit it. So I'm curious to see what version of Condell's offense we're gonna get. Are we gonna get the one that was high powered? Mazzoli was, MVP case. That there was so much going on with that offense. Braylon Addison was considered a top 5 receiver because he could impact the game in so many different ways. There's Jalen Ackman had success under that system. Yeah, I know there's some players that don't really like him. There's been reports of some players not thinking he's the greatest person to interact with. I don't know how true that is. That's their opinion. But I'm interested to see which version of that offense. And from early tells, from what I've seen, it's going to be an exciting offense. So I have my optimism, but I would say it's controlled optimism. It's very, let's see how it goes. I'm not going to get so high on the highs and so low on the lows.
Yeah, and Shane, we got a viewer comment from Tim Renault. He said that he's really interested in seeing what that secondary will look like. So, what do you think about that? And what are your thoughts on the red-black secondary?
Yeah, I mean, the secondary is going to be very interesting. Again, the ratio plays so much into it because you don't know if you're going to go 4 receivers or 4 O linemen. You don't know if you're going to be able to have a Canadian starting receiver. And you don't know if you're going to have an ability to have a starting Canadian running back. So on offense, their part of the ratio is so up in the air that it does affect the defense. And one of those things is going to be, does Alonzo Ade and Justin Howell start on defense? And if so, where do they slot? Does Ade slot in on the weak side halfback position and Howell starts at center or as a safety? That seems like the most logical answer given their history. Ade was a solid corner in the NCAA. He should be able to transition to that weak side halfback position decently well. You have Dandridge coming back, who all-star corner. I think he's going to do very well again this year, especially if he's not focusing on returning punts. He's a shutdown corner. He's arguably a QB1 or a CB1 across the league, no matter where he goes. You have Money Hunter, that had his moments before he got hurt, missed most of the season. I think he only played 4 games last year because of injury. You have the addition of Darius Pickett at your strong side linebacker. You have Damon Webb. I like this secondary. The offense, that defense, that front 7 defensive line should be able to get to the quarterback. I think it really comes down to the offense. If they can spend less time on the field, they'll be rested. They'll be able to make more of those high-end plays that we've seen them have throughout the years. But I think the secondary is arguably the one area that I'm least concerned about on top of the defensive line. Those are the 2 areas that I feel confident in saying Ottawa should be in the top 3 in sacks and turnovers if their offense can keep on the field for longer than 2 minutes.
Yeah, and Tim made another comment. I think Tim's a new viewer, so thanks for joining us, Tim. But he said you guys had some really successful moments last year, but more so than not, it was negated by really bad game-costing moments. The moment that I think back to, and I'm never going to let Cole live this down, he left the building, was when you guys were here in BC. Bobby Dice decides that really long field goal. Of course, Terry Williams runs it back. And then after the Red Blacks go 2 and out, Lucky Whitehead scores the game-winning touchdown with 15 seconds. That happened a few times in Ottawa last year. If you think that the Red Blacks can negate those, as Tim put it, game-changing, really bad moments, can they be fighting for maybe even a home playoff game this year? So second in the East, could they potentially, with how wide open the East is? I know that was kind of going to be our next question, but could they fight for the hosting the East final?
Yeah, Shane. Before you go, that was going to be my kind of next question here. Lastly, was what would be kind of a recipe for the Red Blacks to get in the playoffs? And kind of maybe tie this into with what Tim said here about kind of maybe limiting some of those game breaking plays. Would that kind of maybe tie into maybe a two-part question here of kind of what would be a recipe for the Red Blacks to get back into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I mentioned it before. They need to stay on the field offensively. Like if anyone's played football on either side of the field, if your defense, especially if you play defense, if your offense can't stay on the field by the fourth quarter, you're gassed. You're all like defense is all reactionary. You're always chasing, so you're wasting energy constantly. If you watch a defense when they're leading versus a defense that is losing, you're always going to see a less intense defense when they're winning because they can keep everything in front of them. They can make the easy plays. They're not trying to fight to get that game-changing play. They're not trying to force things for them. They're just letting things happen. And when you do that, you'll benefit from it. So I think in the BC game, if I remember correctly, that was the game that Lewis Ward got hurt on that exact missed field goal.
That's correct, yeah.
That was just, again, Lewis Ward, one of the best kickers in the league. I have no issue with him kicking it because at the end of the day, if he makes it, it's not an issue. The only reason it was an issue is because he missed. And Lewis Ward doesn't miss very often. So, like, I'll take my chances with him. So I have no issue with it. I think it's one of those things where, like, you have an issue because you missed, not because you didn't like the play call. You missed. If he hit it, he hit it. No one would have said anything.
He should have just hit it, and I could have left the game. Well, I did leave the game. I missed the comeback.
You never leave a game before the end of the game.
That is
the golden CFL rule.
He got in my car and he's like, dude, I left the game. I was like, what the fuck are you? Pardon my language, but I was like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, I left the game. I missed it.
You
Shane, you don't know what I put up for the first 55 minutes of the game. The last 3 minutes were the best part for the Lions.
That's why you never leave.
I was fed up with 55 minutes prior.
I was in the exact same situation as you, where Ottawa was losing, and I left because I had to get to work because I was working overnights. And my dumbass forgot that I had tickets to this game, so I went to the game and then went to overnight. Worst mistake of my life because I was exhausted by like 3 a.m. But I left with like 5 minutes or like 10 minutes left to go, 5 minutes left to go to get to work, and Ottawa came back and won. You never leave before the end of the game. I don't care what you have to do afterwards. You never leave before the end of the game.
I'm just gonna say this. I'm just gonna say this. I was one of those kids that my mom told me not to touch the stove because it was hot. I had to touch the stove. So I have learned my lesson. It was a hard lesson learned, but I will never, ever leave a CFL game for the rest of my life now. I know that anything can happen in the CFL, especially comebacks like that. So lessons learned. It was hard. It was tough because I will always remember that game and be told, I'm sure, reminded by Blake. And I wasn't there. I can definitely tell you about how loud the stadium erupted for the Terry Williams return, but couldn't tell you how it looked. But let's get back on to Red Blacks here before we get you out of here, Shane. Let's get a prediction from you, record-wise for the Red Blacks, as well as maybe an East prediction as well. If you don't mind, you don't have to as well. It's all for fun. No big deal if you don't want to.
Yeah, for sure. But going back to I know I missed one of I think Blake's question regarding about what to do to get back into the playoffs. I think it's offense, obviously. Like you need to score more points than your opponents to win. Like that's just kind of the name of the game. So that's an easy answer. But realistically, if you look at the East, there's no team that like on paper, there's no team that screams out as favorite. Like, yes, you got to respect Montreal. They're the defending Grey Cup champs. You have to respect them because of it. It's just the way sports works. You always respect the champion. No matter what you think, you always respect the champion. So, yes, Montreal should be the favorite in the East. We know everything that's going on with Chad Kelly, missing the 9 games, Cameron Dukes. And we're not even that's not even talking about the pieces they've lost on defense, right? Like Darius Pickett, Stiggers, Oh man, a lot of their D line.
Not like Enoch played last year, but he retired as well. It's a voice in their locker room, right?
Yeah. You lost AJ Ouellette. Like, there's a lot of pieces from Toronto that have been dominant the last couple of years who are no longer there. So there's question marks on that team. Hamilton, I mean, it's Hamilton. They're running with Bo Levi and Powell. And, like, don't get me wrong, if Bo Levi can be healthy in any kind of sense, he's a threat. Like, you have to respect the resume. You have to respect what he's capable of. But you look at that roster, and you're like, man, and you look at what Bo Levi's done the last couple of years, you're like, this team should end up being lost in the league. No offense to, like, Tim White, James Bell, or anything like that. And there's a reason why they play the games. But on paper, I think Ottawa is easily on par or better, if not better now, than Montreal. Like, I think Ottawa should look at that and be like, we're the best team in the East. We're going to be arguably the second or third best team in the league. That's how they should come into this season. I would not be anywhere near surprised if Ottawa at least wins the East.
Wow.
And ends up hosting the East final. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, they play games for a reason. Who knows? Maybe Bo Levi does refine his game and he's back to like 2018 Bo Levi and he throws for 5,000 yards and like 50 touchdowns. Who knows? But I think on paper, heading into the season, Ottawa should be on par with Montreal. And they should be at least looked at as no worse than the second best team in the East.
Absolutely. No, I agree with the East being wide open. Obviously, you got to respect the defending champs, but that's kind of why I asked Cliffy the question earlier of do you think Montreal's kind of set up here to make a run here for the next few years? Obviously, him being an Al's guy, he has the confidence that he thinks the Als are up for the task. But like you mentioned about some areas that are maybe missing in Hamilton. Montreal, obviously they have their questions, right? But you think back to last year, they weren't world beaters by any means, and they kind of got. I would never say lucky. I think that's wrong to say for professional athletes, but they got hot at the right time. I think that's a big thing that people forget in sports and kind of the ups and downs of a regular season. But it's all about getting hot at the right time and making sure you're in playoffs. So I definitely kind of agree with the East being wide open. Not too sure if I'm going to tie my stamp to Ottawa to win the East quite yet. Stay tuned for that, folks. We'll preview that in a few weeks. But I agree with you, and I think you have every right to have the confidence, especially with a little bit of kind of a breath of fresh air here with a new quarterback and kind of a big name like Dominic Rhymes coming over, some offensive line help in free agency and stuff like that. So interesting times in Ottawa, and we'll be kind of curious to see how they come out of the gates because I think that's going to tell it all, right? The first probably 3 or 4 weeks here, they stumble out of the gates. It's probably honestly. I know you don't want to hear this, but it's probably curtains. It's probably curtains pretty early.
100%.
I said it earlier, right? Confidence is a hell of a drug. I think once you see a win or two early there, it just snowballs from there, and you kind of hit the ground running to start the season. I feel like I love to bug my friend Daryl here, Edmonton Elks fan, but he likes to hold on to the CFL season doesn't start till after Labor Day. Which unfortunately is just not true.
I don't know about that. Look at last year's playoff race.
Yes, I agree. Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes and no.
But Shane, can we call those playoff races? Were they really playoff races?
Yes,
I would agree because I just said it's about getting hot at the right time. You could say after Labor Day, getting hot after Labor Day is the right. But then you could also the other side of the coin of those first 8 weeks of getting in the hole can kind of mess you up down the road, and then also. Come Labor Day, I believe the Riders are 0-14 in the last 2 years. So I don't know about the season starting after Labor Day if you want to hold it up to that.
To be fair, the Riders only have 4 Grey Cup wins. So maybe they should change their name. Don't steal another team's name, and maybe you'll have more success. So that's a different issue. For any Rider fans that are upset, I don't care. Don't steal other team's names, and maybe you'll have more success. Just a thought. But I think Ottawa, and this is up for debate. Every fan looks at it differently. Ottawa doesn't play until the second week. They have the first week off. That's their first bye. So they kind of have that extended preseason.
What's your opinion on that, Shane?
I can't wait for a 10th team. There should be no week 1 buys.
I agree.
agree.
But that's not the case. So we have to live with it. I think it can be both. I think there's times where it can be a blessing. Sometimes it can be a curse, depending on how you utilize it. But depending on how you view it, I think Ottawa having that first week, they host Winnipeg as their literally their first 2 tests, Winnipeg, Montreal. You cannot get any bigger than hosting Winnipeg and then going to Montreal for their home opener, for their Grey Cup banner raising and their celebration for last year's Cup. No better way to open up the season to test yourself, see where you stand, see where you need improvement than against those 2 clubs. So if Ottawa can come out 2-0, 1-1, that there's optimism there. They just can't go into week 4 0-2. It would be unacceptable for them to go into week 4 0-2. But if they can beat Winnipeg, go into Montreal, beat Montreal, that just raises the confidence to a whole other area code. And when you have a Darius Pickett who is famous for taking those highs and turning them to even more highs, it's going to be a wild ride in Ottawa. If they can win a couple of games early and get on a roll, this team just has a different kind of swagger to it that has been missing since arguably 2018, 2017.
Absolutely. Like I said, confidence is a hell of a drug, baby. It'll do crazy things. So Shane, lastly, before we get you out of here, man, thank you so much for joining us here, taking some of your time out of your day. I know it's late there and back in Ottawa. As well, Shane, big shout out to you for helping me out here the last few weeks on the channel with the thumbnails and all that stuff. Where can the people find your work, 13th Man Sports, everything that you're able to do? Obviously, you're a very talented guy contributing with the website, your graphics, and all that sort of stuff. So let the people know where they can find your work.
Yeah, so you can find me it's kind of where I'm always at. I talking Red Blacks, talking football in general. I'm a big CFL fan. It's kind of what happens when you don't have a team in Ottawa growing up. I just kind of end up falling in love with the game. But Twitter, Instagram, 13th Man Sports. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff for the CFL in the next couple of weeks. We're starting to get things kind of rolling for that. Obviously, I do some of the thumbnails, some of the graphics. I know we're talking a little bit of doing other things. So it's honestly right now, it's all football. It's CFL, and then going to the end of August, you got U Sports. Going to November, it's Grey Cup. Hopefully going to be in BC for Grey Cup, depending on how things go. So I'm excited for the 2024 year and hope you guys can hop on the ride. And I'm glad to talk football whenever. Whenever you need me to hop on, just shoot me a message letting me know the time, the date, and I will make it work.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to thank you as well, Shane, for all your help. You've been such a huge help getting our show off the ground and all the thumbnails and stuff like that. You and Mackenzie both. Mackenzie does a lot of the graphics and thumbnails and stuff like that. But when he's unavailable, you step in and help. So it's been a great help. And honestly, Cole and I can't thank you enough.
Hey, I appreciate it. And again, for anyone who's listening, anyone who I love football, love talking CFL. I will help anyone who asks for help. And if you guys need any help with anything, like you two specifically, if you need a host, if you need a guest, shoot me a message and I will fit it into my schedule.
This won't be the last time you guys will see Shane on the channel, that's for sure. And Blake and I will definitely most definitely have a cold one waiting for you in November for Grey Cup season. We'll have a good time. But before we get out of here, Shane, I thought maybe we'll throw something fun at you, seeing as you said, right? You're a CFL fan. Blake and I are going to hold off on our predictions as of now, but maybe quickly in maybe 3 or 4 minutes, give us maybe your West predictions and kind of your thoughts on maybe the other division.
So for the West, I'll start in the West. You guys are going to love it. Actually, you might not love it, but I think Winnipeg and BC end up tied, and I think the tiebreaker goes to Winnipeg. I think there's some question marks with that receiving core for BC. I personally have some questions around that. I don't agree with them letting go of Rhymes. I mean, I love it because he's back in Ottawa where he belongs. He should never have left. But I love Vernon Adams. I love Caleros. I think they're arguably two of the best quarterbacks in the league. I love what BC's created, especially on defense. with especially with the addition of Covington. That's
There's
going to
a
be a lot
butt
of fun
coming
to
here,
watch.
though.
Pardon?
They said there's a butt coming in what?
There is. That secondary is kind of concerning.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
There's some injuries. I know TJ Lee's done for the year, or out for most of the year because of the injury in the playoffs last year. So there's some question marks within BC's team. But I think overall, they're the second best team in the West. And I won't hear anyone try to convince me otherwise that they are at least the second best team in the West.
Well said.
Winnipeg, their offense is intact. They're bringing back a majority of their cast from last year. And
They lost one offensive lineman.
Yes, they're older. They're getting up in age. If that's how you want to look at it, you can do that. I think they're just getting up there in experience. That's the best way to call it. But they still have weapons. Like that offense can't be denied. Their defense is going to be a hassle to deal with. So I think I have to give it to them. But I think it's going to be a lot tighter than some people realize or want to admit. I think Edmonton takes a massive step. Like massive. I think they're third in the West. I like Bethel Thompson. I like what Chris Jones, which is surprising for me to say. I like what Chris Jones and Giroy Simon have done. I think they've done a lot of good this offseason to try to right some of the wrongs. That offense should be fun. I really like Curley getting junior, so I'm really excited to see what he does in Edmonton with Thompson. I want to see how they utilize Ford, because by the sounds of it is that they will utilize Ford in some capacity. Fourth, Saskatchewan. I'm interested to see what they do at quarterback with Trevor Harris, how he rebounds. But again, he's getting up there in experience. I think he's like 36, 37, coming off a serious leg injury. I don't look at any of their backups and like, oh yeah, if Harris goes down again, these guys are going to win you games. So I expect it down here. I think they're kind of going to go like it's 6-7 wins max under Mace this first year. They're going to be a run heavy team. If you can stop the run and force them to pass, like if they get down early in a game, I think it's over for them. Like if they get down 14, anywhere between 10 to 17 points in the first half, first half, they're done. If you have to rely on throwing the ball, I don't think they can win games. And then last is going to be Calgary. I think Calgary's in for a very disappointing season. I don't like Jake Mayer. I like Schultz. I don't like the way that team is built. I think there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of, okay, they have the talent on paper, but can that talent be transitioned to wins? I don't think they can. I don't think they have the quarterback to do it. I don't know how long of a leash they're going to give him before they go to Schultz, but I don't like what Calgary's cooking right now. So those are my five. I got Winnipeg at 1, BC at 2, Edmonton at 3, Saskatchewan at 4, and Calgary at 5.
All I'm going to say is I like the way that sounds. Shane, thanks for joining us tonight, buddy. Like I mentioned, this will not be the last time we get you on the podcast, on the live show. For folks that are viewing here tonight, this will be the first Canadian Football Fanatics weekly show of Blake and I's season. You guys will be able to see Blake and I on a weekly basis until after Grey Cup from here on out. So, Shane, this will not be the last time, buddy. We will get you on the channel once again to talk some more ball. Not only Ottawa Red Blacks, but CFL, U Sports, you name it, even maybe some 13th Man Sports, what we got cooking up over there. So, Shane, thanks for joining us, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Shane.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Later, buddy. All right. We did the cycle. The East 2 hours later. Hey, I was like, man, I think we'll probably be able to do it in an hour and a half this year because last year was 2 hours as well. Was like,
we could have done it in an hour and a half, but we kept Shane a little later. But
hey, well, that's once you talk, you know what we say here on the pod on the channel. Once you get talking Canadian football, you can never stop Blake and I. So, all good. I'm just excited, man. It's that time of year. We're talking Canadian football. We're talking all things Canadian football as well. Blake and I obviously over here on the West, big Lions fans. That doesn't stop us from talking CFL. It doesn't stop us from talking about the East Division. CFL football, we'll talk about it. How do you enjoy that, Blake? I know you weren't able to join me last year for this, and we weren't able to do it live on the YouTube channel, which I think is pretty cool, as well as Twitter. We actually last year I recorded them individually and then kind of edited them together. This year I found it super cool to do it live with the chat, obviously bring guests in back to back to back like that. How did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I mean, you asked me at the beginning about who I was most looking forward to talking to, and they were all great, really. Cliffy started us off, and then Mike, that was cool to talk to him about. Even you kind of let me go off on a tangent for a couple minutes there and talk to Mike about his play-by-play and stuff like that. And then Troy from Eaton 'em Raw, and of course Shane, who's a good friend of both yours and mine, to finish us off there. So that was amazing. I know you said I was kind of hoping maybe we could do it tonight, but we'll leave the predictions till maybe after next week or maybe the week after. But I think now the only thing left to do is kind of to remind the folks to like, subscribe, smash that like button. That's right, Cole. Smash that like button, subscribe. When you subscribe, hit the little notification bell. It'll tell you every time that Cole and I go live. Follow us on the Instagram. I think eventually Cole and I are going to try and start a Twitter. We haven't done that yet, but follow us on the Instagram. Last time I checked, Cole, we were at 197 followers on the Instagram there. So we're 3 away. 3 I don't know what's going on with my fingers there, but we're 3 away from 200. You and I said if we could get to 200 by the time we get to Kamloops. So folks, you have 3 days to do it. Cole and I
Hey,
are leaving on
Blake, breaking news, breaking news. We are at 202.
Let's go. We did it. So we reached our goal of 200 followers by Cole and I going to Kamloops. Thanks so much for the support, guys. We love interacting with you. I know Cole, just because of the way our jobs kind of work, I have a little bit more free time to kind of interact with people on Twitter and stuff like that. But Cole, you're pretty active when you're available on Twitter. We love talking to guys like Jay, guys like Dave, guys like Darsh. Actually, you know what, Cole? Not to get off on a bit of a tangent, but I was on my way to reffing a couple weeks ago, about
Yeah.
3 weeks ago, and I pull into the parking lot at White Rock out in Centennial Arena there, and this guy pulls up beside me, and he's kind of staring at me the whole time that I'm pulling into the parking lot, and I'm like, this is really weird. Why is this guy staring at me? And so we both get out of our cars at the same time, and he says hello, and I say hello back. It's like 8:45 in the morning. I'm not normally a morning person. I hate getting up early in the morning, which is kind of ironic because half my job is getting up in the morning. But the only reason I like getting up in the morning is because I get to leave early. But like, I'm not a morning person when I'm on days off. I was kind of like, hey, hi, how's it going, whatever. And the guy's like, do you recognize me? I'm like, no, sorry, like I don't. And then he turns around and it was Darsh Cole. His kid was playing in the game that I was reffing. He's like, yo, it's Darsh, like from the Lions, man. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, man. Like I didn't even recognize you. It's so good to see you. Like, how you doing? So it's like, it's so nice to interact with people like that. Hopefully you and I can do that this weekend. I know you and I both interacted with Nick. He's excited to meet us this weekend officially. I know I kind of briefly met Nick at Grey Cup last year, but didn't really get a chance to interact with him. So it'll be a really good time going up to Kamloops this weekend.
It will indeed. Blake, funny story. That's fun. Hilarious. You ran into Darshan, and it was that early in the morning. You couldn't recognize the. I love Darshan. Darshan's a vocal guy on Twitter, and he always expresses his opinion, which I love. And just a good guy that we've met in the CFL
We did.
community here. Blake, before we get out of here, you guys can catch us next next Wednesday, May 22nd. We will be live here on the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel for another CFL season preview show. But this time, we're bringing things out west, Blake. We are talking the West Division. We will have guys like Dave Campbell from the Edmonton Elks on. We will have Mark Stevens, CFL Hall of Famer, Sheldon Jones, Darren Bombing, and BC Lions guests to be announced. So stay tuned for that. It'll be the exact same format as this week, folks. We will have on Dave, Mark, Darren, and Sheldon all on to kind of go through and discuss what's ahead for the season here for their various teams. So it'll be a lot of fun. It'll probably be another I would imagine probably a 2 hour, 2.5 hour show. We'll try to get out of here as quick as possible, but stay tuned on the social medias, folks, on Twitter, on Instagram. We will have out our information more when it comes. I would imagine probably it'll be up on Instagram, Twitter by maybe I would say like Friday or something this week. So stay tuned for more details this upcoming week. Blake and I will be back the following week with our season prediction show. I don't think I've told Blake this yet, but a prediction show where we'll do our West Division, East Division predictions, maybe even throw in a couple MOP or something like that predictions. You name it. We'll have probably maybe an hour to probably kind of go through some predictions, and then maybe with the maybe first half an hour show of the show, Blake and I will be talking all things BC Lions, because Blake and I will be up obviously at BC Lions training camp and kind of being able to dig into that, what we saw up there, as well as by that time, I would imagine the Lions will have played a few preseason games, if not all of them. So it'll be a really good time. That'll be 22nd. May 22nd will be our West Division preview. And then from May 27th, May 29th, still nothing set in stone, will be our season preview, our season predictions episode, which will be a ton of fun. Maybe we'll have on Shane or something like that. We'll have on a few guests that episode as well, and just chat some Canadian football. It's real from here on out, folks. You will see Blake and I every week, like I said. Trying to aim for Tuesday shows, but honestly, folks, stay flexible, stay up to date with us on social media. If we have to do Wednesdays, Tuesdays, kind of fluctuate throughout the season. It's just what has to be done. Blake's a family man over here, jobs and all that sort of stuff. It just kind of comes with the beast. It's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. So things change, but everyone's usually super flexible, being able to take in our shows when they're able to. That reminds me, Blake, people that are viewing the show here tonight, we have actually 30 loyal viewers, listeners here tonight, Blake. You
Not
don't
bad,
have to.
not bad.
Not bad, not bad. We're getting there, Blake. Let's see if we can beat that next week with the West show, which I think we might be able to. Reminder that you don't have to watch the live show when we go live. You guys can find it on the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel, as well as my personal Twitter account at Cole McGarvey. You guys can go over on the YouTube channel, head over to the live tab, click the live tab. You guys will be able to find every live content from me and Blake this past season, as well as this upcoming season as well. So go head on over there and take in that good content. You don't have to view us live if you're at work. I know Jay's a big fan of, when he's at work or whatever, coming home and he's able to view the show live afterwards and take it in. Obviously, he misses out on the live kind of being able to interact with us in the chat, but that's no biggie. He's still able to take in the show and get at us on social media afterwards. Like you said, Blake, you're a little bit more active on me during the day. Usually I'm kind of more active on Twitter towards the nighttime after kind of 3 p.m. Pacific. But hit us up on Twitter, social media, all that stuff. We're loving to interact and talk all things CFL football. Blake, before we get out of here, last but certainly not least, folks, if anybody's in the Kamloops area this upcoming Friday to Saturday.
Dave, we're looking at you.
Actually, I guess Friday to Sunday. We'll be heading home on Sunday there. Come say hi to us. We plan on doing some definitely some content there from Hillside Stadium there in Kamloops. If you guys are familiar with kind of what Tim and Cliffy were doing there from Alouettes camp. Actually, what the 3 Down Bros, shout out to those guys that are doing some Lions content as well. 3 friends
Turf
that do
District as well.
Yes, the Turf District as well as that. Where I saw that they were covering Elks camp there today. Blake and I will be doing the same kind of thing. We will recap. What's it? FanFest, I believe it's called there Saturday, right?
Yeah.
So we will actually be boots on the ground for the scrimmage. We'll be giving you all the goods there afterwards, what we saw, who impressed. So stay tuned for that. If you guys are Lions fans tuning in, even if you guys are CFL fans in general, if you guys would like to see maybe Blake and I maybe be boots on the ground live show there Saturday night after the scrimmage, let us know on Twitter. Let us know in the comments below, and we can potentially work something out. If you guys subscribe, follow the Alouettes Flight Deck podcast and the Turf District, kind of familiar what they did live on the field there. Throw the phone on live and kind of just talk about what they saw there on the field throughout practice there. Let us know in the comments. We can definitely do that as well. If not, stay tuned for some YouTube shorts, content, stuff like that. So, Blake, 2 hours and 4 minutes, buddy. I think that's probably pushing our longest show of us doing the
I
show, I
think
believe.
so. Yeah, definitely. I
I
think
can
we
tell by
might have.
your eyes. I can tell by your eyes you're tired because I'm tired as well. I need some food. I'm definitely hungry. Blake, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, just that I had a lot of fun doing this tonight. So thanks to all four of our guests, Cliffy, Mike, Troy, and Shane, talking some East Division football. And I'm looking forward to the West Division next week. Actually, no, I lied. There is one thing I want to say before we leave. Matt Baker, Nick Kowalski, if you're listening, announce the freaking concert.
Yes.
I have people.
Yes.
No, Cole. I'm not kidding you. I have people that I'm reffing with. They are texting me almost on a daily basis. And they're like, dude, who's the concert? I'm like, I don't know. I know Matt, not really well, but I met Matt, I met Nick. They won't tell me. I don't know who the concert is. Announce the concert for the home opener, please.
I'm going to say this very nicely, and this is not a threat to neither Matt or Nick, because I like you guys both. You guys don't release this in about, let's say maybe by the time we get up to Kamloops, I'm going to be one of those Twitter guys. I'm just going to start randomly, sources say, and I'm going to be dropping a lot of fake, sources say Drake's coming, or sources say Michael Jackson's coming to BC Place or something like that. I'm going to get a lot of people angry with BC Lions when they lied about who's coming because Cole told me on sources on Twitter. So I'm gonna use my power. I'm telling you guys right now. Jokes aside, though, I saw a friend of ours as well, Jordan, on Twitter.
He did, yeah.
He mentioned the same thing as well, and I was like, man, because I obviously bought my tickets. I believe probably going on a month ago now, probably maybe even a little bit longer than a month, probably about 2 months ago, and was expecting, buy my tickets because the concert would probably be named here in the coming weeks, and it's probably 2 months later, and we still haven't had the goods. So I'm going to either start dropping fake or untrue who's coming, or they better live up to the hype of keeping us waiting here. I'm hoping for maybe the number B there, and the hype's it's gonna live up to the hype. But let's release that soon, guys. We want to know. We're anxious here. So Blake, without further ado, buddy, let's get out of here and call it a night. We will see you guys next week. Blake, I will see you Friday for a long trip
Sounds
up to
good.
Kamloops. Appreciate everybody for tuning in here tonight. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. The support is greatly appreciated. We will catch you guys next Wednesday night.
Thanks, guys.